The Valori Dominion had ruled the stars for 8,000 years. And in all that time, no species had ever refused their demands. No world had ever stood against their might. And no fleet had ever challenged their supremacy. Ambassador Kithrin stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Submission, watching the blue planet grow larger on the viewing screens before him. He had conquered 17 worlds himself, had watched civilizations crumble at his feet, and had never once felt anything but boredom during these moments. Earth would be no different, he was certain of this. The Harbinger fleet stretched behind him like a wall of death across the void. 12,000 warships, each one capable of destroying a continent, hung in perfect formation at the edge of this primitive system. The humans called it Sol, named after their small yellow star, and Kithrin found this almost amusing. Such a tiny sun, such a fragile world, and such foolish creatures who thought they mattered in a universe ruled by the Dominion. His second officer, a tall female named Vreth, approached with the scanner reports in her hands. "Ambassador, we have completed our analysis of the third planet," she said, her three eyes blinking in confusion. "The results are most unusual." Kithrin turned to face her, his scaled face showing mild irritation. He did not enjoy unusual things during conquest operations. Unusual meant delays, and delays meant he would miss the celebration feast on the homeworld. "Explain yourself, Vreth. What could possibly be unusual about a species that has barely left their own planet?" Vreth hesitated, and this hesitation made Kithrin's irritation grow stronger. Officers in the Dominion fleet did not hesitate. They spoke with certainty, or they did not speak at all. "The humans have no orbital defenses, Ambassador. No weapons platforms surround their world. No fleet guards their system. We detected only primitive satellites and a few small vessels near their moon. They appear to be completely defenseless." Kithrin's three mouths curved into what passed for a smile among his kind. This was not unusual at all. This was simply pathetic. "You find this confusing, Vreth?" "I find it perfectly normal. These humans are young, barely a few thousand years into their existence. They have not yet learned the first rule of the universe, that the weak exist only to serve the strong. Prepare the ultimatum broadcast." The communication officers worked quickly at their stations, setting up the transmission that would reach every receiver on the blue planet below. Kithrin had given this speech many times before, on many worlds, to many species who had wept and begged and eventually submitted. He knew the words by heart. He stepped forward to the transmission platform and began to speak. "People of Earth, I am Ambassador Kithrin of the Valori Dominion. Your world has been chosen for integration into our eternal empire. You have one solar cycle, one rotation of your planet, to accept our generous terms of surrender. You will give us complete control of your governments, your resources, your technology, and your population. In return, we will allow your species to continue existing as servants of the Dominion. This is not a request. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning. Refuse, and your world will burn. Your cities will become dust. Your people will become nothing but a memory that even we will forget. The choice is yours, but know this: no species has ever refused the Dominion and survived. You have one cycle. Choose wisely." The transmission ended, and Kithrin stepped back from the platform with satisfaction warming his cold blood. He turned to Vreth and gestured toward the viewing screens. "Now we wait. In my experience, they will respond within a few hours. First come the diplomats, begging for terms. Then come the military leaders, threatening resistance they cannot deliver. Finally come the political rulers, signing whatever documents we place before them. It is always the same." But hours passed, and no response came from Earth. Kithrin found this strange but not alarming. Perhaps the humans were still arguing among themselves, still trying to decide who would speak for their fractured world. He had seen this before on planets with multiple nations. Then, after nearly half a cycle of silence, a single transmission came from the planet below. The communication officer's face went pale as he listened. He turned to the ambassador with something Kithrin had never seen in a Dominion officer's eyes: uncertainty. "Ambassador, we have received a response from Earth. It comes from something called the United Earth Defense Council. I did not know such an organization existed in our intelligence files." "Play it," Kithrin commanded, his confidence not yet shaken. The bridge speakers crackled, and then a human voice filled the command deck. It was calm, steady, and somehow more terrifying than any threat Kithrin had ever heard. "Ambassador Kithrin, this message is from Fleet Admiral Helena Vance of the United Earth Defense Council. We have received your ultimatum, and we have discussed it among ourselves. Our answer is simple: no. We will not surrender. We will not kneel. We will not serve. You have made a terrible mistake coming here, Ambassador. You looked at our world and saw weakness. You scanned our skies and found no fleet. You measured our technology and judged us primitive. But you failed to ask the most important question. Why would a species as aggressive and warlike as humanity appear to have no defenses? The answer should frighten you, Ambassador. You should not have come here." The transmission ended. Kithrin stood in silence for a long moment, processing what he had just heard. No species had ever spoken to the Dominion this way. No world had ever refused so completely, so defiantly. Vreth moved closer to him, her voice barely a whisper. "Ambassador, what do we do now? Should we delay the invasion? Should we request reinforcements?" Kithrin's pride burned away his brief moment of doubt. He was a conqueror of the Dominion. He commanded 12,000 warships. He would not be frightened by bold words from a primitive species. Reinforcements? For a planet with no fleet? "No, Vreth, we proceed as planned. These humans are bluffing. They have nothing but words and courage means nothing against plasma cannons. Order the fleet to advance. We will show these humans what happens to those who defy the Dominion." The Harbinger fleet began its advance toward Earth, thousands of warships moving in perfect formation past the outer planets of the Sol system. They passed the gas giants without incident, their sensors detecting nothing but ice and rock and silence. But as they crossed the orbit of Neptune, something strange happened. A sensor officer called out in alarm. "Ambassador, I am detecting unusual readings at the edge of the system. Space itself appears to be fluctuating. The readings make no sense." Kithrin walked to the sensor station and looked at the data himself. The officer was right. The readings were impossible. It was as if reality itself was flickering, like a reflection on disturbed water. "Equipment malfunction," he declared, though a small voice in his mind whispered that something was very wrong. "Continue the advance. Earth awaits its new masters." The fleet moved forward, and the strange readings faded away. Kithrin pushed the incident from his thoughts and focused on the conquest to come. He never noticed that his forward scout wings had stopped reporting. He never noticed that 200 of his ships had simply vanished from the formation. He never noticed that the darkness between the stars had begun to move. The humans had called it correctly. The Dominion should not have come here. And very soon, Ambassador Kithrin would understand why. On Earth, the people watched the skies with terror in their hearts. The news had spread across every nation within minutes of the alien transmission. 12,000 warships were coming, and humanity appeared to have nothing to stop them. Cities erupted into chaos. People fled into the countryside, packed into bunkers, held their families close, and prayed to whatever gods they believed in. Religious leaders called for calm. Political leaders called for courage. But everyone could see the truth on their screens. A fleet so vast it blocked out the stars was coming to enslave them all. In homes across the world, parents tried to explain to their children what was happening. How do you tell a child that monsters from the stars have come to take everything away? How do you explain that life, as they knew it might be over? But in the halls of power, in the secret rooms beneath mountains and under oceans, a different kind of meeting was taking place. Fleet Admiral Helena Vance stood before the United Earth Defense Council, a group of military leaders and scientists whose existence had been hidden from the public for 2 centuries. These were the keepers of humanity's greatest secret, the guardians of a plan that had been set in motion long before any of them were born. "Ladies and gentlemen," Vance said, her voice steady and strong, "the day we have prepared for has finally arrived. 200 years ago, our ancestors looked up at the stars and asked a simple question: what if we are not alone? And what if those we meet wish us harm? They did not wait to find out. They began building our true defense." A holographic display flickered to life in the center of the room, showing the outer reaches of the solar system. Beyond Neptune, beyond Pluto, in the cold dark places where no probe had ever ventured, something was waiting. "The Black Fleet," Vance continued, "was built in absolute secrecy. No civilian government knows of its existence. No public record mentions its name. 300 warships, constructed over generations, crewed by volunteers who erased themselves from all records. These men and women have lived their entire lives in the darkness between worlds, training for this moment, waiting for the enemy that would inevitably come." General Marcus Chun, the oldest member of the council, spoke up with wonder in his voice. "I knew about the project, of course, but I never truly understood its scale. How did we keep this secret for so long? How did we build so much without anyone knowing?" Vance smiled, and there was pride in her expression. "Because humanity learned one crucial lesson from our own history, General. We learned that true strength is not displayed for enemies to measure. True strength is hidden, prepared, and unleashed only when needed. Every secret budget, every classified program, every black site project for 200 years has fed into this single purpose. The world thought we were building weapons platforms and defense satellites. Instead, we were building an armada." She pressed a button, and the display changed to show a single ship. It was massive, angular, and painted the color of the void itself. Unlike any human vessel ever revealed to the public, this ship looked designed for one purpose, only absolute destruction. "This is the Shadow of Terra, flagship of the Black Fleet. She carries weapons that our enemies cannot imagine, powered by technologies we have never shared with the public. Every ship in the fleet is similarly equipped. We did not build a navy, ladies and gentlemen. We built a hammer to break anyone who dared threaten our world." A younger officer raised her hand nervously. "Admiral, you speak of 300 ships. The enemy has 12,000. How can we possibly win against such numbers?" Vance's smile grew wider, and something dangerous gleamed in her eyes. "Because we did not build our ships to match their strength. We built our ships to exploit their weakness. Every species the Dominion has conquered has done the same thing. They built defensive fleets meant to protect their worlds. They thought of war as something to survive. We thought differently." She changed the display again, showing battle simulations and weapon specifications. "Our ships carry graviton lances that crush matter into nothing. They carry plasma cascades that burn hotter than the core of our sun. They carry weapons we simply call erasers, because that is what they do. They erase enemy ships from existence. And more than that, our ships can fold space itself, appearing anywhere in a battle without warning." The room fell silent as the council members absorbed this information. They had known about the Black Fleet in theory, but seeing its true capabilities was something else entirely. General Chun broke the silence with a question that weighed on everyone's mind. And the crews? You said they erased themselves from all records. What does that mean exactly? Vance's expression softened, and for a moment, something like sorrow crossed her face. It means exactly what it sounds like, General. The men and women who serve in the Black Fleet gave up everything. Their names were removed from all databases. Their families were told. They died in training accidents. Their very existence was deleted from human history. They live in the dark, train in the dark, and were prepared to die in the dark if necessary, all so that Earth would have a final line of defense that no enemy could see coming. She straightened her shoulders and continued. There are children in that fleet who were born in the void, who have never seen Earth except in pictures. There are soldiers who have trained for 50 years for a battle that might never come. They sacrificed everything, and now their sacrifice will save us all. Far out in the solar system, in the cold space beyond Neptune, Fleet Admiral Marcus Cole stood on the bridge of the Shadow of Terra. He was an old man now, his hair white and his face lined with decades of waiting, but his eyes burned with fierce determination. Around him, the Black Fleet was coming alive. Ships that had drifted silent and cold for years were powering up their reactors. Crews that had lived in darkness were preparing for war. The moment they had trained for across generations had finally arrived. Cole opened a channel to his entire fleet, and his voice carried across 300 ships. Warriors of the Black Fleet, this is Admiral Cole. For 200 years, we have waited in the shadows. We have watched our families grow old without us. We have missed births and deaths and every moment in between. We did this because we believed that someday Earth would need us. That day is today. He paused, letting his words sink in. The Dominion believes humanity is weak. They believe we have no defenses. They believe they will simply walk into our system and take our world. They are wrong. They have made the mistake that every predator makes when facing prey that has learned to fight back. They have underestimated us. The fleet was fully powered now. 300 ships ready for battle. Today, we show the universe what humanity can do. Today, we teach the Dominion that some worlds cannot be conquered. Today, we make them regret ever learning Earth existed. He took a deep breath and gave the order that would change history. All ships, activate fold drives. It is time to ignite the dark. Space began to bend around the Black Fleet, and reality itself seemed to tremble. The ships did not accelerate. They simply folded the distance between themselves and their enemies, preparing to appear in the heart of the Dominion formation. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and the heavens would never be the same. Ambassador Kithrin was growing impatient. The Harbinger fleet had passed Mars and was approaching Earth, yet the humans still showed no sign of surrender. Even more troubling, his forward scout wings had stopped sending reports nearly an hour ago. "Communication officer," he barked, "contact Scout Commander Vreth and demand an update. This silence is unacceptable." The officer worked at his station for several moments before turning back with confusion on his face. "Ambassador, I cannot reach Scout Commander Vreth. I cannot reach any of the forward scouts. It is as if they have simply vanished." Kithrin felt a chill run through his cold blood, but he pushed it aside. Equipment failures happened. Communication disruptions occurred. There had to be a logical explanation. "How many ships in the forward scout wings?" he asked, keeping his voice calm. 200 warships, Ambassador." 200 ships did not simply vanish. Kithrin's mind raced through possibilities. A solar flare disrupting communications, a navigational error sending them off course, perhaps even mutiny among the crews. Any of these explanations made more sense than the alternative. "Order the fleet to halt," he commanded. "Send a probe to the last known position of the scouts. I want answers. The Harbinger fleet slowed to a stop. 12,000 warships hanging in the void between Mars and the asteroid belt. The probe launched and raced toward the Scout's last position at maximum speed. Minutes passed like hours as Kithram waited. The probe's telemetry showed nothing unusual: empty space, scattered asteroids, the distant light of the human sun. Then, the probe reached the coordinates, and its cameras revealed something that made every officer on the bridge gasp in horror. Debris, twisted metal, shattered hulls, frozen bodies drifting in the void. The forward scouts had not vanished. They had been destroyed. 200 Dominion warships reduced to nothing but wreckage, and the probe sensors showed the destruction had happened mere moments before the fleet lost contact. How is this possible? Vreth whispered, her voice trembling. Our scouts were heavily armed. What could destroy them so quickly, so completely? Kithran had no answer. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. The humans were supposed to be primitives. They were supposed to have no fleet. Yet something had annihilated 200 of his ships without a single distress call. All ships, maximum alert. He commanded. Raise shields, arm all weapons, prepare for enemy contact. We are not alone out here. The Dominion fleet snapped into combat formation. Thousands of weapons powering up, shields flickering to life. Every sensor swept the surrounding space, searching for any sign of the enemy that had killed their scouts. They found nothing. The void was empty, silent, dark. Minutes stretched into an eternity of waiting, and some officers began to wonder if the destruction had been some kind of accident, some terrible coincidence. Then the stars began to move. It started at the edges of the Dominion formation, small flickers of darkness that seemed to shift and flow. At first, the sensor officers thought it was simply their imagination, a trick of the light. But then the flickers grew larger, and reality itself seemed to tear open. Ships emerged from the folds in space, appearing inside the Dominion formation as if they had always been there. Black ships, angular and terrible, painted the color of the void itself. They did not announce their presence, did not demand surrender, did not follow any of the rules of war that the Dominion had imposed on the galaxy. They simply opened fire. The first wave of attacks came from weapons the Valori had never seen. Beams of pure gravitational force struck Dominion warships and crushed them like insects, compacting thousands of tons of metal into spheres the size of a fist. Plasma cascades swept across hull after hull, burning through shields as if they did not exist. Missiles that glowed with impossible light struck their targets and simply erased them. No explosion, no debris, just empty space where ships had been. Kithran watched in disbelief as 500 of his ships died in the first 30 seconds. The humans were not supposed to have weapons like this. No one was supposed to have weapons like this. Return fire. He screamed. All ships, return fire. Destroy them. The Dominion fleet responded with everything they had. Thousands of plasma cannons unleashed hell toward the black ships. Torpedoes by the millions streaked across the void. Energy beams powerful enough to crack moons lanced toward the enemy. And the black ships danced through it all. They moved in ways that should have been impossible, folding space to avoid attacks, appearing behind ships that had targeted them, striking from angles that made no tactical sense. For every shot the Dominion landed, the humans landed 100. The battle became chaos. Dominion ships exploded in every direction, their crews not even having time to scream before they died. The black ships weaved through the formation like shadows, striking and vanishing and striking again. Admiral Cole watched the carnage from the bridge of the Shadow of Terra, his face showing no emotion. This was what they had trained for. This was why they had sacrificed everything. Every simulation, every drill, every year of preparation had led to this moment. Captain Rias, he called to his tactical officer, Focus our graviton lances on their command ships. Break their coordination. Yes, Admiral. Targeting their largest vessels now. The Shadow of Terra turned toward a cluster of Dominion battleships and unleashed its main weapons. 3 graviton lances fired simultaneously, each one carrying enough force to crush a small moon. The enemy battleships tried to evade, but space itself bent around them, dragging them toward the beams. The first battleship collapsed in on itself, its hull crumpling like paper. The second suffered the same fate, its crew crushed into nothing in an instant. The third managed to raise emergency shields, but the lance simply pushed harder, and the shields shattered like glass. Across the battlefield, the Black Fleet was proving what humanity could do when fighting for survival. Every ship performed with perfect precision. Every crew executed their training flawlessly. The Dominion had numbers, but the humans had purpose. 11 minutes after the battle began, 2,000 Dominion ships were gone. The void between Mars and Jupiter was filled with debris, bodies, and the screaming transmissions of dying crews. Kithrin stood in the center of his bridge, his 3 mouths hanging open in shock. This was not supposed to happen. This was not how conquest worked. The weak were supposed to submit. The strong were supposed to win. Ambassador, his sensor officer said, his voice barely a whisper, "We have identified the enemy flagship. They are broadcasting a message on all frequencies." Admiral Cole's voice filled the Dominion command deck, calm and cold and absolutely terrifying. "Ambassador Kithrin, this is Fleet Admiral Marcus Cole of the United Earth Black Fleet. You came to our system demanding surrender. You threatened to burn our world and enslave our people. Now you understand your mistake. We have been watching your empire for 200 years. We have studied every battle you have ever fought, every species you have ever conquered. We built our fleet to destroy you. Surrender now, and we will let your survivors leave. Refuse, and not one of your ships will escape this system alive." Kithrin's pride warred with his fear, and pride won. "All ships maximum attack." He roared, "Overwhelm them with numbers. We are the Dominion. We do not surrender to anyone." The battle resumed, and the heavens themselves began to burn. The Dominion had not conquered 11,000 worlds by being weak, and Ambassador Kithrin had not risen to his position by accepting defeat. Despite the shock of the first exchange, he forced himself to think clearly, to adapt, to find a way to turn the battle. "All fleet commanders," he broadcast, "change formation to sphere defense. Force the enemy to engage us from all directions. Use our numbers to surround them." The Valori were masters of space warfare, and even in chaos, they responded with discipline. The remaining 10,000 ships were formed into a massive sphere, weapons pointing outward in every direction. The black ships could no longer strike and vanish so easily wherever they appeared. Hundreds of Dominion guns would be waiting. Admiral Cole saw the change in enemy tactics and nodded grimly. He had expected this. The Dominion had not built their empire by making the same mistakes twice. "All ships, switch to pattern Delta," he ordered. "They want to trap us inside their formation? Fine, let them." The Black Fleet changed its approach, and instead of dancing around the enemy, they began punching straight through. Groups of human ships would appear on one side of the Dominion sphere, blast their way toward the center, and vanish before the enemy could respond. Each pass cost the Dominion dozens of ships, but the sphere formation held. And now the numbers began to tell. The Black Fleet had started with 300 ships against 12,000. Even with their superior technology, even with their impossible weapons, mathematics was a cruel master. Every minute of battle cost the human ships they could not replace. The Dominion lost 10 ships for every human vessel destroyed, but they had the vessels to lose. The fury of mankind took a direct hit from a Dominion battlecruiser and broke apart. The silent vengeance was caught between 3 enemy ships and burned. The Hope of Tomorrow suffered reactor failure and exploded, taking her crew of 2,000 into the void. Cole watched his fleet dying, one ship at a time, and felt each loss like a knife in his heart. These were his people, his family, men and women who had given up everything to defend a world most of them had never seen. And they were being ground down by sheer numbers. "Admiral," Captain Reyes said quietly, "we have lost 47 ships. At this rate, we will be destroyed within 2 hours. The enemy still has over 8,000 vessels." Cole closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, there was terrible resolve in his gaze. He had hoped it would not come to this. He had prayed that their technology would be enough. But the Dominion was too strong, too numerous, and hope alone would not save Earth. "Captain, initiate the Prometheus contingency." Reyes' face went pale. Everyone in the Black Fleet knew what those words meant. They had trained for it, prepared for it, but none of them had truly believed it would be necessary. "Admiral, are you certain?" "The cost will be—" "I am certain," Cole interrupted, his voice heavy with sorrow. "Send the signal. Let our people make their choice." The signal went out across the Black Fleet, and on 30 specially designated ships, captains received orders that they had always known might come. These were the Prometheus vessels, ships equipped with experimental fold drives that could do something terrible. They could collapse space itself. The cost of using this weapon was absolute. The ship, its crew, everything within the fold radius would be destroyed. But so would everything else. A collapsing fold drive created a momentary singularity, a black hole that lasted only seconds, but consumed everything it touched. Captain Elena Vasquez of the Burning Dawn received the signal and felt tears running down her face. She looked around her bridge at her crew, at the men and women who had served with her for 20 years in the darkness between worlds. They all knew what was coming. They had volunteered for this possibility long ago. "You heard the Admiral," she said, her voice steady despite her tears. "We all knew this day might come. We all chose to be here. Now we choose again, do we go forward or do we stand down?" Her first officer, a young man named Thomas, who had been born in the fleet and had never known anything else, spoke first. "Captain, I joined this fleet to protect Earth. If my death can save millions of lives, then it has meaning. I vote we go forward." One by one, the crew gave their answer, and every single one of them chose the same thing. They chose to die so that others might live. "Helm," Vasquez commanded. "Plot a course for the center of the enemy formation. Maximum acceleration. Engineering, begin the fold drive overload sequence." The Burning Dawn surged forward, its engines burning at full power. The Dominion ships tried to stop it, pouring fire at the single vessel racing toward their heart. The shields failed, the hull began to crack, but still the ship flew on. At the last moment, Elena Vasquez opened a channel to the enemy flagship. "Ambassador Kithrin, my name is Captain Elena Vasquez. I was born on Earth, in a city called Barcelona. I had a family once, before I joined the fleet. I gave them up to protect my world. Now I give up everything else. Remember my name when you tell your masters what happened here." The fold drive collapsed. Space tore itself apart around the Burning Dawn. A sphere of absolute darkness expanded from the ship's position, and everything it touched simply ceased to exist. Dominion warships vanished by the hundreds, pulled into a momentary singularity that devoured them whole. When the darkness faded, 400 enemy ships were gone, and the Burning Dawn with them. But the Burning Dawn was only the first. Across the battlefield, 29 more Prometheus ships began their final runs. The Dominion tried to stop them, tried to destroy them before they could reach their targets. But the Black Fleet protected their suicide vessels with everything they had. The last sunrise flew into a cluster of Dominion battleships and tore a hole in reality. The Humanity's Pride crashed through enemy lines and took 800 ships with her into oblivion. The never forgotten, the defiant spirit, the children of Earth one by one. They sacrificed themselves, each one creating a sphere of destruction that consumed hundreds of enemy vessels. Kithrin watched in horror as his fleet was carved apart by enemies who welcomed death. This was not warfare as the Dominion understood it. This was something else, something the Valori had never encountered in 8,000 years of conquest. The humans were not fighting to survive. They were fighting to make the Dominion pay the highest possible price for every inch of space. They were turning their own deaths into weapons. What are these creatures? Vreth whispered, her voice filled with terror. What kind of species destroys itself to destroy its enemies? Humans, Kithrin answered, and for the first time in his life, he understood what it truly meant to face a species that would not submit. They are called humans. The battle raged on, and the heavens between Mars and Jupiter burned with the light of collapsing stars. The Black Fleet was dying, but they were taking the Dominion with them, ship by ship, sacrifice by sacrifice. And on Earth, billions of people watched the distant flashes of light in the night sky, not knowing that each flash represented heroes giving their lives to keep them safe. The battle was far from over, but one thing had become absolutely clear. Earth would not fall without a fight that the galaxy would never forget. The battle had lasted 18 hours, and the void between Mars and Jupiter had become a graveyard of unimaginable scale. Debris fields stretched for millions of kilometers, the shattered remains of thousands upon thousands of warships drifting in eternal silence. Ambassador Kithrin stood on the bridge of the Eternal Submission, his flagship battered and broken, held together by emergency systems and desperate repairs. Around him, only a handful of Dominion ships remained, perhaps 100 out of the 12,000 that had entered this system with dreams of easy conquest. The Black Fleet had suffered terribly as well. Of the 300 ships that had emerged from the darkness beyond Neptune, only 91 still flew. But those 91 ships now surrounded the pathetic remnants of the Harbinger fleet, their weapons charged and ready. Admiral Cole looked at the enemy survivors on his tactical display and felt exhaustion weighing on his soul. So many of his people had died today. So many friends, so many families who had served together in the darkness for generations. The Prometheus ships alone had taken nearly 2,000 crew members into oblivion. But they had one. "Open a channel to the Dominion flagship," he ordered. The communication link established, and Cole found himself looking at Ambassador Kithrin for the first time. The alien looked nothing like what he had expected, smaller, somehow diminished by defeat. His 3 eyes were dull, his scaled skin had lost its shine, and his posture spoke of absolute despair. "Ambassador Kithrin," Cole began, "your fleet is destroyed. Your invasion has failed. You came to our system demanding surrender, and instead you have witnessed the death of the greatest armada the Dominion has ever assembled. Do you understand now? Do you finally see what humanity is capable of?" Kithrin tried to speak, but at first no words came. He had served the Dominion for over 200 years. He had conquered 17 worlds. He had never, not once, experienced anything like this. How? He finally managed to ask. "How is this possible? You were supposed to be primitives. Our scouts reported no fleet, no defenses, nothing. How did you build this? How did you hide it? How did you know we were coming?" Cole allowed himself a small, sad smile. "We did not know you specifically were coming, Ambassador. We simply knew that someone would." Humanity looked up at the stars and saw a universe filled with empires and predators, species that had built their civilizations on conquest. We knew that eventually, one of those predators would turn its eyes toward Earth. He paused, letting the words sink in. So we prepared. While our public governments built satellites and argued about budgets, our secret councils built the Black Fleet. We studied every war in galactic history, learned from every species that had been conquered, and asked ourselves one question: what would it take to defeat the unconquerable? The answer was simple. It would take a fleet that no one knew existed, weapons that no one had ever seen, and warriors willing to sacrifice everything. Kithrin stared at the human admiral, and something strange happened. For the first time in his long life, the Valari felt respect for another species. "Your warriors," he said slowly, "the ones who destroyed themselves to destroy us, they chose to do this? They were not forced?" "They volunteered," Cole answered. "Generations ago, their ancestors volunteered. They knew what might be asked of them, and they said yes anyway. That is what you failed to understand about humanity, Ambassador. We do not fight because we believe we can win. We fight because some things are worth dying for." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the hum of damaged systems and the distant crackle of debris striking weakened shields. "What happens now?" Kithrin asked, his voice empty of the arrogance that had filled it mere hours ago. "Will you destroy us? Will you execute the survivors?" Cole shook his head. "No. We are not monsters, Ambassador, despite what your propaganda may have told you. You will be allowed to leave you and every surviving member of your fleet. You will return to the Dominion, and you will deliver a message to your masters." He leaned forward, and his eyes burned with fierce intensity. "Tell them what you saw here. Tell them about the weapons that crushed your ships and the warriors who flew willingly into death. Tell them that Earth is not a world to be conquered. It is a warning. Any fleet that enters our system with hostile intent will meet the same fate as yours. We do not want war, Ambassador. We want to be left in peace. But if peace requires us to burn anyone who threatens us, then we will burn you all." Kithrin nodded slowly. There was no fight left in him, no desire to argue or resist. He had been utterly broken, not just militarily but spiritually. "I will deliver your message," he said. "I will tell them everything. But I must ask you one question, Admiral. Your fleet is damaged, your numbers reduced. What will you do if the Dominion sends another fleet? A larger one? We have millions of ships across our empire." Cole smiled, and there was danger in that smile. "Then we will build more ships. We will train more warriors. We will develop more weapons. And we will make the cost of attacking Earth so high that even your endless empire will bleed dry trying to pay it. That is the lesson you should take back to your masters, Ambassador. Humanity is not a problem to be solved with one fleet. We are a threat that will only grow stronger with every attempt to destroy us." The communication ended, and the battered remnants of the Dominion fleet limped toward the edge of the solar system. True to Cole's word, the Black Fleet let them go, watching in silence as their defeated enemies fled into the void. On Earth, the sun rose over a world that had been saved by heroes it never knew existed. The people had watched the distant lights of battle in the night sky, had prayed and hoped and feared through the longest night in human history. Now they emerged from their shelters to find their world still free. The governments of Earth announced the victory, though they revealed little about how it had been achieved. The Black Fleet remained secret, its surviving crews returning to the shadows from which they had emerged. They would rebuild, they would train new recruits, and they would wait once more for the enemy that would inevitably come. Admiral Cole stood on the observation deck of the Shadow of Terra and looked down at the blue marble of Earth. He had never set foot on that world, had given up any chance of a normal life to defend it. But seeing it now, still spinning peacefully through the void, he knew that every sacrifice had been worth it. "Admiral," Captain Reyes said quietly, approaching from behind, "we have received a transmission from Earth. Fleet Admiral Vance wishes to speak with you." Elena Vance's face appeared on the screen, and even across the vast distance, Cole could see tears in her eyes. "Marcus," she said, her voice breaking, "you did it. You saved us all. The Dominion is retreating. The invasion is over. Earth is free because of you and your people." Cole felt his own eyes grow wet. "It was not just me, Helena. It was every man and woman in the Black Fleet, and especially those who gave their lives. The Prometheus crews, the captains who flew into oblivion, they are the real heroes. They will be remembered," Vance promised. "Somehow, someday, the people of Earth will know what was sacrificed for them. The Black Fleet will not be forgotten." Cole nodded and turned back to look at Earth one final time. Somewhere down there, children were being born who would grow up free. Families were holding each other, grateful to be alive. A species that had faced extinction had instead risen to become something greater. The message would spread across the galaxy. The Dominion would tell others what had happened here. Species that had lived under tyranny for millennia would hear about the humans, who had turned the heavens to fire rather than submit. And in the darkness beyond Neptune, construction had already begun. The Black Fleet would be rebuilt, stronger than before. Because humanity had learned the oldest truth in the universe, peace was not given. It was earned. The stars were no longer safe for empires. The dark was no longer empty. And Earth would never, ever kneel.